You know that I was mentioning when Steve Millington was here a few minutes ago that there was a writer at National Review today who says the reason that Donald Trump has become such a lightning rod and a figure, maybe polarizing as well, but that he has such strong numbers among some people in this country when it comes to the polls, and I think that there's some truth to all of this. The writer says that the anger that people have is legitimate. I brought this up the other day. I think my words were, "We're angry, but we're angry about all of the right things." Why are people angry? Well, I've got a few small things here I wanted to share with you and explain why they are angry, and then maybe we can get into that column by the writer at National Review as to why. And he even quotes somebody writing at Politico who's somewhat liberal. But here we go. Right off the top, I got this out of the Daily Signal. This comes in my email every morning from the Heritage Foundation. Well, 6 days a week. They do updates through the week, work week, and then on Saturday I get a wrap up of everything that happened on their website during the week. 4 in 10 Americans support and an equal percentage disagree with a Supreme Court decision on gay marriage in June. Now, I was just in a forum the other night online, and some guy was telling me that the overwhelming majority of the American people approve of this decision and they approve of same-sex marriage, and therefore majority should rule. So, well, of course, by that reasoning, last several years, polling data has come back saying the vast majority of Americans now oppose abortion. So why isn't that outlawed if we're going to be ruled by the majority? Well, but see, that's different. That's something that the other side wants, so that's okay. But it may be statistically a tie, but here are the numbers, because your breakdown actually gives a slight edge to people who are opposed. Ask about the Supreme Court's decision on the case a couple of weeks ago. 39% of respondents said that they agree with the ruling. 41% said that they disagree. So actually, it's a 2%. By 2%, a majority in this poll say no, they don't like it. Of course, it also leaves 20% of the population, which was watching, well, American Idol got canceled. They were watching, I guess, Cartoon Network, so they don't have an opinion. The poll also found that 59%, so that would mean 3 out of 5 of Americans believe that business owners should be free to decline to participate in a same-sex wedding service if they feel doing so would violate their religious beliefs, up from 52% earlier this year. So all of the militant homosexuals, the gay mafia as it's called, who've been out there trying to browbeat people and threatening lives and doing all of those things, apparently have hurt their own cause, because there's a 7% increase. You know what? Keep it up. Johnny and Jimmy want to keep that up? We'll get it up to 100% pretty soon. And if they believe the majority rules, then as business owners, we'll be able to do what we please. And perhaps it'll keep our churches safe from harm with all of this. So that's one thing I wanted to bring up. People are angry about these situations because we have so many decisions made any longer in this country by fiat and by just the muscle of certain minorities, trying to muscle everybody else with the media in their corner, trying to play this blame game. If you don't agree, then you're somehow a bad person. Here's something else I came across. We had a very quick and I thought informed reaction yesterday. We had just a short segment on the air dealing with General Robert E. Lee and the effort by people to take his picture down, or at least cover up his Confederate uniform at the Lee County Courthouse in Florida. A friend of mine joked last night online and said they'll be okay if they name it Spike Lee County instead of. It's named after Robert E. Lee, but if they name it after Spike Lee, he said the NAACP will go along with that. But we got into that discussion, and that led to the flag discussion about Confederate flags and people's efforts. People are having them stolen, personal property and the like. This comes from Allen West Republic. Now, liberals don't like Allen West because he's a person of color who happens to be an arch-conservative and a great American patriot. Well-known black pro-Confederate flag activist dies in car accident after alleged confrontation with young black men. I remember years ago, my friend Doug Beatty, his dad was in a movie. Before there was Mississippi Burning, which was a big theatrical release. There was a TV movie called Murder in Mississippi, and Doug's dad played the sheriff in that movie. And I remember watching that movie where the 3 civil rights workers in Philadelphia, Mississippi get dragged out of their car, and they get run off the road beforehand by a group of Klansmen who are riding around in an old 64 Dodge, which one of the most unique-looking automobiles and perhaps ugliest creations in the history of Detroit. But Dodge engineering got much better under Lee Iacocca as far as the looks of their automobiles. So in this movie, they actually dragged these guys out of the car, the three civil rights workers, and they ended up killing them, which is what happened in real life too as well. Well, listen to this story and then wonder why this isn't getting much media attention. A black Mississippi man who often dressed in Confederate regalia to support the state flag has died in a one-car accident. Now, by the way, there were black men who fought on both sides in the Civil War. I think you're aware of that. The Highway Patrol says 49-year-old Anthony Hervey was killed Sunday when the 2005 Ford Explorer he was driving left the roadway and overturned on Mississippi Highway 6 in Lafayette County. Why did it overturn? Because he was run off the road by a group of young, angry black men. We know this because there was a woman riding with him as a passenger in the car. She survived. And apparently he has been targeted, or had been targeted by this gang of young men because he was a supporter of the flag and a supporter of his state's heritage, for better or worse. They ran him off the road. His car rolled several times. He was killed. Now, why isn't this story making national news? Back in the early 1960s, when was Schwerner and Goodman, and I've forgotten the name of the third young man who died, who was the real target of the Klansmen, in fact, in that situation, that was international news. That was international news. Now you have a black man who's run off the road and killed in Mississippi. And where's ABC? Where's CBS? Where's NBC? Where's the New York Times? Where's the Washington Post? Why aren't they reporting this story? Well, because like Alan West, this is a black man that liberal media, white liberal media, doesn't actually like. So therefore, they probably think it's great that he was killed in this car accident, and he won't be reenacting the Civil War any longer in uniform and waving a Confederate flag. So there's another reason I think that Americans are upset. They see these double standards. How about this one? I got this out of the Hill this morning, which is a very liberal publication. UN backs Iran deal, that would be the United Nations, infuriating lawmakers from both parties. Had you heard about this? Of course, the Obama administration quickly rushed this to the United Nations and said, you know what? If we get this approved, then members of the House and Senate won't dare object to the Iranian treaty. No. Why the hurry? Well, the hurry because, of course, if we actually know what's in it, we're not going to like it. And it just tells you that you have people in Congress who are saying, wait a second, hold your horses. The United Nations does not make decisions for this sovereign nation. And the Obama White House is essentially saying, yes, it does. Mr. Obama needs one very important ally in the U.S. Senate, and he may not have him. Now, being a native New Yorker, and I'm not a Manhattanite, I grew up in a small dairy farming town. People, of course, have to look at a map to figure that out. My hometown would be like driving from Twin Falls to Coeur d'Alene when it comes to driving from New York City to my hometown. You get you understand how that works, right? Geography is it's a very big state from east to west. And I grew up in the far western corner of it. I was much closer to Toronto, Buffalo, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh than ever New York City. But I got to know Chuck Schumer when I was working in New York. After he got elected to the U.S. Senate, I used to see him as often as a couple of times per week. Now, he's a flaming liberal on most issues, but you also remember that he was the guy who shut down the Dubai ports deal 10 years ago. So there are times when he does rise to the challenge as an American. And speaking with Steve Kornacki on MSDNC yesterday, Senator Schumer said that he will not be just a knee-jerk vote. He won't fall in lockstep behind the president when it comes to Iran.
Through the years, my 41 years as an elected official, is on important things, just do the right thing. Now, no one has a monopoly on what the right thing is, but do what you think the right thing is. So I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about it, learning about it, and then I'll just do the right thing, and I'm not going to let party or pressure or anything else. What's good for America first and foremost, and what's good for Israel, which of course I care a lot about.
And of course, for those of you who don't know it, Chuck Schumer is Jewish, and unlike perhaps a Bernie Sanders, he may actually have some. He may still feel it's important to follow his ancestry and his faith, and to prevent Israel from being wiped off the map by Iran. And apparently the White House is not going to be able to horse trade with Chuck Schumer.
But look, when I think the president's wrong, I go against him. I just voted against the trade bill and TPA because I thought it hurt middle-class incomes. The president talked to me regularly on this issue, but I told him, unless it changes, even if it helps corporate profits, I'm not going to be for it if it decreases middle-class incomes, and I think it does.
If he wasn't such a big tax and spender, you could almost like the guy. But at least you have a voice, and they're rare in this country any longer, who are willing to stand up and say, no, especially on some issues. He may not do it on a lot of them, but at least on this one. There's an old line from the late Christopher Hitchens where he was talking about Winston Churchill. And he mentioned that Churchill, was short-sighted on a lot of his decisions, probably drank too much, which impacted a lot of his decisions. We didn't like Mahatma Gandhi and the Indian revolutionaries, and that was because he didn't feel that people from that part of the world were as good as the British. Yes, he might have been somewhat of a racist. And he ticks off all of these allegations against Churchill, but he says, you know what? He was right about the one thing that mattered most. He stood up to Adolf Hitler. So you can occasionally find people in politics or in public life, in government, who occasionally will do the right thing. The reason Americans, as a caller said in the last half hour, are so PO'd is because there are so few of them. And they won't do it on a regular basis. Even the ones like Schumer, who occasionally step out of his usual leftist role and says no, he doesn't do it all the time. And that's what I think people are so galled about, is that they don't feel that anyone listens to them anymore. They don't feel that they have any say in anything that happens in this country anymore. You're just a number. And, if they can't get you to vote, they don't want you to come out and vote if they can't get that vote from you. So they'll figure out ways to depress the turnout. You've got all of these things going on. How is it any different from that crowd at the College of Southern Idaho, the trustees, who are now trying to depress public opinion and reaction to some of their schemes when it comes to refugee resettlement? So people have an absolute reason why they're upset and they're angry, and they need someone out there who's going to stand up. Donald Trump wasn't very nice to John McCain, but John McCain wasn't very nice to Donald Trump. And you know what? At least Donald Trump doesn't give a red rat's, And somebody else out there might have the same ability. They're just not using it because somebody's pulling them aside and saying, well, Senator, if you say that, they won't like you over at the New York Times, and then you'll have to come out and grovel and say you're sorry. Look at Martin O'Malley. Somebody said, they demanded he say Black Lives Matter. He said all lives matter. They shouted him down. Then he ends up turning around saying, I'm sorry. I'm so ashamed to be a white man. And all of a sudden I said to myself, if I was a Democrat, why would I vote for a wimp? Bad question, isn't it, considering who's in the White House? Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Hey, I've got much more ahead. There's another abortion video out, Planned Parenthood video. Things do not look good for the folks over at the abortion mill. Details coming up.